Hello everyone, it's Sylvia from Circe Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at 10 mass market decks that I think are underrated. So what is an underrated deck? For me, it's a deck that, generally speaking, it looks like it's one of the many. It's one of the many decks that has been released, and obviously it is a thriving industry, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. There's been a lot of publishers that have embraced the release and the production of tarot and oracle decks. And I have to say we've been really lucky because in the last couple of years, whether it's US Games or even Rockpool or Los Scarabeo, they've actually contacted indie artists that had created and published their own deck. And they made it possible for us to access these decks at reasonable and affordable prices by releasing them mass market, sometimes with a few changes, sometimes being faithful to the vision of the creators. In some cases though, I noticed that I look at a lot of channels. I am a fan of tarot tubers everywhere. I have an Instagram account and I'm always checking out other people's decks, and also on Facebook or on any other platform. And I noticed that sometimes there are decks that I actually find really, really cool for one reason or another, but they're kind of dismissed, possibly, or in any case underrated, so they don't receive the love that I think they should, or I think that they deserve. And so today it's going to be all about that. So it's just mass market decks. Let's start. So the first one that I'm thinking about is this one, and this one, granted, has been released only a couple of months ago. It's an oracle deck. And I think that it's been underrated because many people will think it's just another botanical deck. And to be honest with you, that was probably also my first reaction. I have so many oracle decks, mass market decks, that are based on botanical themes. And because there's so many, what happens is that we actually run the risk of, letting them pass by us without necessarily paying attention to them. Understand that if you have something like 10 botanical decks, you think twice about getting another one into your collection because you think that you probably have covered everything that could be covered about that. In this case though, let me tell you, this is special. This is unique. So it's a Deadly Apothecary Oracle by the Priestess Moon. This has been published by Rockpool. As I said, it's a relatively recent publication. I think it went out in the market something like 3 months ago. Could be more, could be less. I didn't actually check, but I haven't seen it anywhere. So I've seen a couple of channels talking about it in the 3 months ago in the upcoming publications or something like that. But I've never really seen anyone working with the deck. Apart from me, I always talk about this deck because I really, really love it. And I think that it really deserves a second look. This is not your usual botanical deck, let me put it this way. Let's talk about the concept of this deck first, because that is what I believe makes it unique in the plethora that we have of botanical decks. So this is called the Deadly Apothecary, and the reason why the creator chose this title is because it focuses indeed on poisonous plants. That is something that's already setting it apart from all of the other botanical decks that, at least that I have got in my collection. I actually don't have a deck that specifies, that focuses only on poisonous plants. Then, when we have a look at the guidebook, we understand the reason for this choice. And let me just, we can pick a card, for example, the Black Bryony, which is number 28, and the keyword here is catharsis. And let me just say, by the way, the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. So if you have a look, if you're not familiar with this deck, we're looking at a deck with black, really dark backgrounds, and in some cases also the other colors that have been chosen to portray the characters on the cards are rather dark, or you don't have the vibrant yellows, for example. You have muted colors in some cases, like in this case. but it is still stunning. I really do believe that. For example, the fact that there is a lot in the drawings on the cards, in the scenery depicted on the cards, that it is referring back to the specific plant, but it's always combining that with the essence of the plant itself. So embracing change, for example, here shows you, for example, there's a skull on the head of the character here, because in many cases the skull, which is sometimes representing death, it also tells you about change. It tells you about transformation, in probably the same way in which we could look at the death card in a tarot deck. And so I really like this, and it's also, the production is very good. We've got a really dark, almost blood-like red on the edge in here. It's got a total of, let me just see the last card. So we've got 36 cards, which admittedly it's not necessarily what we like. I always say, and everyone else seems to agree with me, that we love an oracle deck that has at least, let's say, 45, 44 cards, because in many cases, most of us would use an oracle deck in combination with a tarot deck. And so a tarot deck which has 78 cards obviously will be, you know, it's not on level with the oracle deck, and so it doesn't give you the whole spectrum of possibilities. But 36, let me tell you, there's some oracle decks from Los Carvel, for example, that only have 32 cards, so 36 is probably getting there. It's not there yet, but it's getting there. But what I really love about this deck is that it gives you, apart from the usual information that you find in any other deck, and let me just zoom in to show you a bit better what I'm talking about. So of course it gives you the thumb print in color of the card, and it gives you the botanical name, the energy, other names, the traditional medicinal uses, and magical and historical uses. And you know, up to this point we can see that it is kind of similar to other decks that we may already have in our collection. What's unique about it is this side of the page. So we're talking about the poison and the antidote, and this is actually a unique concept. So we've seen in other decks the possibility to use it with an upright and reversed meaning, or you know, relating to a shadow work and a light work. Other decks that comes to mind that really do an excellent job in order to show you these two aspects of your work, for example, the Soul Mirror Oracle. However, this one, instead of showing you the upright and the reverse meaning, actually shows you the upright as the poison, so some kind of a reversed meaning, and then the antidote is, well, basically an antidote to the reverse meaning. So what you can do in your practice, whenever you pull one of these cards and it shows you the archetype that represents the poison, it shows you literally what to do in order to heal that, in order to correct, in order to amend the negative aspects that can represent the poison of that specific card. So let's have a look at Holly with Allow Wealth. So it's number 33. So we go to number 33, which is here, Holly, Allow Wealth, and let's read the poison. So the poison talks about this archetype. The disempowered Holly is jealous of the good fortune of others. They like to judge other people's spending habits on nice things or lavish holidays, often stating these people would be better off donating to charity. So you see what I'm talking about. There's something that, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek as well kind of description. It's a very accessible kind of description too, and it puts us in a very specific kind of mood. We have an idea about this card, this plant, and the uses of this plant. Then it goes on talking about that they become very envious and deeply feel the lack of indulgence in their own life, choosing to be offended by displays of wealth, which makes them very unhappy. There's nothing wrong with Holly wanting good fortune and comfort for themselves, but their poisonous behavior demeans others for the enjoyment of wealth. They feel righteous when they disapprove of other people's prosperity, which makes them feel better about their own feelings of luck. And let's be honest, haven't we all been there? Haven't we all, at one point or another in our lives, felt that way about somebody else's fortunes? And let me tell you, sometimes it's funny to notice that it is the persons that you've known the longest that, you know, elicit some kind of feeling of jealousy sometimes, because you feel like you've started from the same starting point, and maybe they've achieved something that you really want to achieve yourself, but for whatever reason they got there faster, quicker than you. And so you feel like you're jealous, you feel like you deserve as much as they did. And so this is the archetype of the holly in this case. Looking at the antidote, that's where the deck really stands out. So holly can give themselves permission to enjoy little luxuries without breaking the bank. They can accept that having money does not make you a bad person, but instead adds to the enjoyment of life and helps others. They must realize that other people's finances are none of their business and concentrate on their own wealth. Rejoicing in the good fortune of others and imagining prosperity for themselves opens channels for receiving. Holly deserves more and can practice allowing more. Isn't it just amazing? The fact that it gives you the solace of knowing that we've all been there. We've all been the poisonous holly. We've all been the jealous person of others' fortune. But it tells you that it's okay. It's okay to feel that way, but it's also okay to move forward, to move on from those feelings. And it tells you how you can do that. Instead of being jealous of somebody else's fortune, focus on manifesting them for yourself as well. And so this deck is all about this. It's all about presenting an archetype of something that may make us feel different from others, and different in a reversed meaning. Think about, for example, a Queen of Pentacles reversed, for example. And it also gives you the antidote to that, a way in which you can, integrate your practice in order to be able to stop feeling those feelings of shames, for example, of envy and jealousy, and start making something good for yourself. And that's one of the reasons why I really do believe that this is one of the underrated decks in my collection, and that I don't necessarily see around that much. Also, in order to show you how much I actually love this deck, I'm going to show you a couple of pairings that I think really put the deck in a different perspective. And so I'm going to pair it first with the what's this one? The Tarot of the Drowning World, which is an indie deck, by the way. Sorry about that, but I do believe that there's other mass market decks you can pair it with if you don't have this the Drowning World Tarot. But this is such an amazing combination. And it's obviously mainly due to the aesthetics, but when you start reading with it, you can see that it's actually really a straight kind of reading. So you will notice that there is these echoes and resonances coming from the fact that we see a black or a really dark background in both of the decks. Obviously the theme, the botanical theme, is reflected in both these decks. But also sometimes there is this kind of similarities between the figures, the characters that are depicted in the deck as well. Now, the Drowning World is a bit of a pipish deck when it comes to the minors, although there's always a lot of symbology associated to the pips, so it makes it really an interesting and fascinating kind of deck. But it's absolutely fantastic to be able to feel this conversation creating right in front of your eyes. And as I say many times, when the combination is a good one, technically speaking, you're just a person flipping the cards. You're assisting, you're an audience to this kind of conversation, and you benefit from that. And so it's kind of amazing what these two decks can do together. I really, really enjoy them paired up together. Another deck that I really enjoy pairing up with the Deadly Apothecary Oracle is, alas, it's another indie deck. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose, and I realized that, this is a video about mass market decks. But that doesn't mean that we cannot pair them up with, with indie deck. And I'm talking about the Gentle Tarot by Mary in the Sky. And I'm sure that every one of us, or not everyone, of course not, but a lot of us in the tarot community have this deck, or at least know about this deck. And this deck has been around for a few years, and it's just an amazing deck. And I absolutely love the way in which these two interact together. And again, we're looking at a very pleasing aesthetic combination. And so the color palette is very similar. We still have the darkish or even black background in a few of the cards. The color palette, as I said, you know, you can see the color of the rainbow reflected also on the cards of the Oracle deck sometimes as well. But it is the kind of bridge that you build, or the cards actually build, you know, between the Oracle deck and the tarot cards. And it's just an absolute joy to use these two together. I'm really pleased to talk about the Delhi Apothecary Oracle because I honestly believe that it should be part of your collection, because I'm not associated with the creator nor with Rockpool. Of course, this is a deck that I purchased with my own money. It has not been sent for review. It's just one of those decks that I really enjoy using, and because I don't see very often, as I said, in other social media platforms, I thought about, you know, making you aware of the existence of this little gem. Let's move on to the next deck. Another Oracle deck that I really believe it's underrated, let me just zoom out a little bit because it's larger, is the Into the Lonely Woods by Lucy Cavendish, illustrated by Dan May. This is a deck that has been published by Blue Angel, and I believe it's been out there for a while. Now, I seldom see this deck portrayed in social media, and almost never in TarotTube, for example. This, let me tell you, is an amazing deck. It's a very emotional deck. It has actually been designed by the creators in order for you to be able to work on those kind of mourning, grieving feelings that happen whenever we are faced with a loss. It could be a loss of someone, it could be a loss of something. This is indeed, it says, blessings and messages for times of solitude and isolation. What happens to us when we go through mourning, and it could, as a matter of fact, is not necessarily just related to the loss of something and someone, but as it says here, times of solitude and isolation. There is something very poignant about this deck. First of all, I just wanted to show you the cards because I believe that the drawings in this deck are very unique, and that's one of the reasons why I strongly believe that it's underrated, because it's not just one of the decks. The drawings are amazing. It is basically portraying these characters that you know, they look like supernatural beings because they don't necessarily correspond to anything that exists in real life, and yet the illustrator managed to convey this sense of uniqueness, this sense of presence, and so much compassion in these cards, in these drawings. We feel what these characters are feeling, we feel what they're going through, and we can definitely relate that to something we ourselves have been through. I mean, look at this card, Between Two Worlds. How emotional is this card? It's amazing. We see this character standing on what looks like this bit of land in the middle of the ocean or a body of water, and then we also see that there's another character, a human character, standing on the other side, and they're not facing each other. And that to me is fantastic. The feelings that I get out of this card, they speak 1,000 words. I don't necessarily need to go into the guidebook to understand what this is referring to. It's the moment in which you feel like everything is turning their backs on you. It's the moment you feel that you're alone out there and no one is even trying to reach out to you. And perhaps this doesn't have to be this way. Perhaps there is some way to either one of these characters to turn around and communicate with each other, despite of the distance, despite of the fact that it looks like it's impossible to get out of here. And so I really love the way in which this deck is giving me the possibility to improve on my personal practice, but also to improve on anything that is related to my life. Because sometimes, indeed, we find ourselves in these situations. Do not hide your light. How amazing is this? And there are a lot of decks out there that actually use the same kind of concept, you know, a kind of embracing sentences or messages that we can find at the bottom of the cards. But this one does so in such a compassionate way that I really think this deck stands out in, you know, out of many other decks that try to portray this kind of feelings and practice. Your presence is a gift to others. How many times have we thought that we don't count? That our presence, that we could go away and not be missed. I don't know if it's okay to bring this up, but for example, I was watching a video from one of my favorite gamers on YouTube the other day. And he's got over 30 million subscribers. He's incredibly famous worldwide. He's been doing that for over 10 years. And he released a video that was really emotional to many of us, because he was saying, I was thinking about quitting YouTube because sometimes I take, you know, maybe 2 weeks off, and when I come back, it feels like I haven't been missed. It feels like I could never come back and no one would even you know, notice the difference. And I feel that many of us feel that way sometimes, or the sadness of letting go. And this is incredibly powerful because we see this character, their head down and the slouch in their shoulders, and that posture tells a lot. And the human character here is letting go of this bird that is supposedly going to freedom, to find freedom, but sometimes it's also referring back to letting go of someone who's not there anymore. So I highly recommend this deck. If you recognize, if these feelings resonate with you, if you can relate to some of these cards, I can assure you 1000% that you will actually feel better, because you will go through the book and, for example, you will read the description and it will just make you feel better, because you will know that you're not the only one out there going through something like that. So this is one of the decks in my collection that I really think that it's actually underrated. Another deck that I really feel is underrated, because I don't see it that often on social media, is the Circus Tarot. This is by Lisa Robertson and it's illustrated by Josh Taft. This is a deck that has been brought to my attention by a dear friend of mine who's also a lot into tarot. And I have to be honest with you, the reason why I still believe that it's underrated simply is that when you look at the presentation of this deck in your browser, perhaps on Amazon, or perhaps you go to a bookstore and you find it, and it doesn't necessarily look that different from other decks that may already be in our collection. But let me tell you, that is absolutely not the case. First of all, it's a Llewellyn release, so as you all know, Llewellyn is fantastic when it comes to the quality of the box, for example, but above all, the books that come with the deck. So this is no little white book. Let's be honest, this is an actual companion book, and it's always amazing because it tells you so much about the cards. I absolutely love many of the things that are brought to my attention in this guidebook, but one of the things that I really enjoy is a sort of a different approach to the court cards. And let me show you what I mean. So we've got the deck here, and by the way, let's just talk about how beautiful the backs are. So as you can see, they're really colorful. I really like them. Let's just zoom in because otherwise it's too far away. I really like these backs. Obviously, you have the representation of the minor in the back, and they're also reversible. So if you want, you can definitely shuffle with reversals. It is a borderless deck, which is kind of my preference, of course. It's not for everyone, but you know, it is a common consensus, at least lately, that we want to have a look at the artwork, of course, and sometimes some borders are a bit too large, a bit too wide, and so they take away, we feel that it takes away a bit from the artwork in the cards. Now let's just pick the court cards. Okay, so let's just start, for example, with the suit of wands and the court cards. So we see here we've got the page, we've got the knight, we've got the queen, and we got the king. Let me just zoom out a little bit because otherwise they don't fit. And let's see, they fit now, perfect. Okay, so what I meant with a different approach to the core card is this. If you can notice, we've got in all of the pages, so this is the page of cups, and as you can see, it's depicted in the same pose, or at least in the same kind of activity, and the knight and the queen and the king as well. So we've got the same kind of settings, let's say, for each one of the core cards throughout the minors, the different suits. However, what we notice is that this is telling a story. And I absolutely love it when a tarot deck is giving you an additional layer of interpretation and understanding to the cards, in specific to the chord cards. Why? Because the chord cards in many cases are not necessarily straightforward when we pull them, when we draw them in a reading, for example. Of course, we can choose to read them as archetypes, we can choose to read them as, for example, a timeline. The pages is about days, the knight is about weeks, the queen's about months, and so on and so forth. But it's something very static to me. It doesn't contain different takes or different interpretation depending on the creators themselves. And I love it when I can actually see and notice these kind of differences, because not only they can help me interpret the cards, but they can also give me a different perspective that I want to share with everyone else. So the theme of this deck is about the circus, obviously. So these are artists that work in a circus. So what we see at the stage of the page is the person is actually sitting in front of a mirror. They're probably applying makeup, as you can see. Sorry, I probably should show you like this. So this person is sitting in front of a mirror, they're applying makeup, most likely. They have their own costume on the side. They're really busy attaining that level of showmanship that starts with, literally sitting in front of a mirror and just changing your appearance. This is, let's say, step one on the ladder to become a king. So it is a metaphor of every pages. So the pages are the ones that actually start their journey throughout the core cards. They are still themselves, as you can see here. The makeup has not been applied yet. It's in the process of being applied. And there is a costume here, but not wearing it yet. They know what their role is. They know what they should look like once they're completed their transformation, but they're an initial stage of that. What we can see in the knight is that they're actually finalizing their costume. They're actually wearing and making sure that the gloves are fitting, as you can see here. And obviously, because this is referring back to the suit of wands, which is of course a fiery suit, the alchemical element of fire, we see the color red is predominant in the choice of the color palette. With the queen, we actually see them for the first time approaching the wand, which is obviously the symbol that is relating back to the minor, so the suit of wands. It is amazing because there's also a crown which looks like it's still floating in the air, but it's kind of getting, towards the person. And the wand is also floating in the air. There's a sense of magic in this card. The dress, let's say the uniform, the costume is complete, is being worn. This person is also in full makeup. They understand that everything is done the way it should have been done. They feel like the transformation is complete. They're approaching their specific essence in the alchemical element and in the suit of the wands. So what the queen represents in this case is obviously the archetype of the performer, and there's challenges to be had. There's something that of course still needs to be finalized in order to become the king. But I wanted to bring your attention to something very specific that is really unique to this deck, and so far I have not seen it, at least in decks in my collection. So when we look closely at the knight, let me just show you here. Do you see that this side of the face of the knight it does have marking, so it does have makeup, but this side looks like it's got something else, something more. At the beginning I thought it was some kind of a beard, for example, or you know, facial hair. I wasn't entirely sure what it was, and I also noticed that this part is kind of darker. I wasn't entirely sure about that until I understood what the Queen and the King actually look like. So the Queen and the King are the two aspects of the Knight. Except that they obviously are turned directionally in a different way. So we see on the Queen, we see only this side of the face of the Queen, and this side is the side that looks at their mastering their skills and becoming the performer. But when we look at the King, we see the part where we see, let's call it facial hair, it could be makeup, but as you can see, it really reminds you of this side of the Knight. So we're looking at a really interesting way of depicting this kind of escalation, this kind of evolution in the court cards. From the Knight, we have one aspect of the Knight that solidifies, or it's impersonated by the Queen, and the other side that is actually impersonated by the King. And if we look at the suit of swords, so the suit of swords is even more clear. So this is the Knight of the suit of sword, and I think that you will see it a lot better. So as you can see, this side of the face of the Knight doesn't have any, let's call it facial hair, or you know, it could also be makeup, it could be some kind of a additional part to the veil, it could be lace, but in any case it is a purple like thing that it does actually show on the other side of the face. So the Knight contains in itself the future aspects of both the Queen and the King. If we look at the Queen, this is this side of the face because it's got this curl, for example. We can see it here. And the King has this purple kind of facial hair. It could be hair and perhaps a little bit of a beard and a mustache. So you can see that the King is the same person as the Knight, but is looking into the other direction. And we can assume that this actually signifies the ability of the Queen to look inwards and the ability or the necessity of the King to look towards the community. For this reason, I was actually blown away by this deck because of the possibility that this gives you when you actually draw these cards, and you can talk about these aspects, additional layer of meaning of these cards in the deck. Let's have a look at another deck. So this deck is a bit underrated because, let's face it, it's another Los Carabao deck in a tuck box. And how many times, and I'm guilty as charged, how many times have I looked at the Los Carabao decks coming in a tuck box and think to myself, do I actually need it? Is it really gonna be different? Is it gonna be one of the ones that come with a little white book that has general meanings to the cards? We don't know, obviously, we don't have access. Whenever we buy a deck or we are bracing ourselves to spend money on a deck, we don't necessarily know what we're gonna get. I can tell you this deck is absolutely fantastic. It is underrated because of the meaning of the cards, and also because, let me tell you, this is actually a different kind of cardstock. I actually stopped buying the decks of the Las Carabao coming into a tuck box because I do prefer the deluxe edition that come in a two-part box, etc. And so those ones definitely have a different quality of the cardstock. So this may have changed perhaps in the last year or so. This is the first time that I, in any case, noticed this. It's an actually really good cardstock. It has a really good feel to it. I know that a couple of years ago they finally got rid of the borders with the additional languages on the top and bottom. There was a time in which that was really helpful for people, of course, but I do believe that now, either in the tarot community, we either know the different ways in different languages to title the cards, or we can get there with knowledge, for example, of how the tarot is set out. But in this case, I really believe that it's underrated. First of all, I absolutely love the color palette of this deck. It's absolutely fantastic. The artwork is magnificent as well. But this is actually based on Circe, or Circe as we name it and as we call it in Italian. And it's obviously related to Greek mythology. So Circe or Circe was a witch. She was a witch that was bewitching Ulysses. And Ulysses or Odysseus, obviously depending on how you call him, depending on the Roman name or the Greek name. And these are all of the things that actually happen. I don't know if you read, there's a couple of books that have come out lately about Greek mythology, but in a narrative or in a fiction kind of format. And they're absolutely entertaining. And if you have read the book about Circe, you will recognize some of the stories that actually happen that are, described in the book. And I have to say, I am amazed by this deck, not just by the beauty of it, which, it is common to other decks, of course, but what sets this deck apart from all of the other tack box Lo Scarabeo decks is that finally the book, or the little white book, is actually all of it in English, as you can see. And it really is related to the cards and describes the scene that actually happen and are depicted in the cards. This, let me tell you, if you don't have a lot of Lo Scarabeo decks, especially not the older ones, this is a fantastic novelty. It's a new direction they decided to take, and I really applaud them, and I really hope that they will stick to this for other decks, other upcoming decks in the future as well. We are looking at let's say a longer kind of description when it comes to the major, and a shorter one when it comes to the minors and the court cards, but it's absolutely fine, because even when it comes to the minors, let me just grab a minor just to give you an example. The Four of Wands. So let's just go to the Four of Wands. We got the cups here, we got the pentacles, we got the wands, and let's just go to the Four of Wands. Okay, so this is the card. Let me just zoom in. So the Four of Wands: in the lands looked upon with benevolence by the gods, in the fields where the cult of the great Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and pasture, is celebrated by two young dancers. Indeed, is describing the scene. It also is setting, at least we have an indication of the geographical settings. They raised a tree temple at the outskirts of the city, adorned with freshly gathered foliage. Grapes, a symbol of prosperity, accompany the steps of the two lovers who live in the abundance of the fruits bestowed by the earth. The walls of the home resound with the lovers' happiness, who gracefully thanks the god for protecting their union. Keyword: prosperity. I absolutely love that there is a geographical setting, there's a historical, or rather mythological setting and explanation. There's also references to the symbols, and also it gives you a keyword about the card. Whether you agree with the keyword or not, I actually don't. With Four of Wands, is not necessarily prosperity for me. It's more about that celebration of, I read sequentially and numerologically, so obviously the four comes after the growth of the Three of Wands, in which you are going out and enlarging, expanding your dominion. That also corresponds to the Deccan walk, for example, in Aries 2. And the four represents the consolidation of all that. So sequentially, after you expanded your dominion, your empire, your influence, you actually celebrate that. Obviously, it can be read as prosperity as well. It's one of the keywords that you can associate with the Four of Wands. Regardless of whether you agree or not with the keywords, it is actually fascinating that we finally have an introspective look and a descriptive look at the cards and the way in which they are set within the theme of the deck. And it's the same for all of the other cards. So this way we get to know a little bit more. Let me read you the Nine of Cups, which is actually really, really cool. The Nine of Cups is Aeolus, the god of the winds, is seated on a royal throne. There you go. I really love this card. As opulent as the storms he has the power to unleash, he proudly shows off his hair. Stirred by the agitated winds he dominates. He oversees waves and tides that run free on the surface of the waters, like wild steeds galloping over the liquid element. Aeolus watches over the sailors who take their goods to distant lands, the destination of satisfying gains and fulfilling desires. Fulfillment. I absolutely love that we get to know that this is Aeolus, because of course we could have read about it, we would know about the characteristic of this god, but having an actual depiction, being able to put a face to the myth is actually kind of interesting. So this is one of the reasons why I really think that this deck is underrated, because at first look it may look like one of the many Los Scarabeo decks that come in a top box. I can assure you that this has got so much more to it. And if you're into Greek mythology, which many of us are lately, this is actually a great addition to your collection. But let's talk about this deck, because I absolutely love this deck. This is the Signs of the Times Oracle. It's a Hay House release from last year, I think mid last year. So it's been out for a while, and I just don't understand why it's not celebrated, because this is a fantastic little deck. It's very affordable. So it's a 44 card deck, which we like. It's got the stamp of approval of the tarot community. It comes with a guidebook. Honestly though, I feel like it's so very intuitive, because thanks to the combination of let me see, because these cards are turned. So thanks to the combination of the images and the keywords, and together with the title as well, it is a very straight reader. Angel numbers, you get the receipt with $11.11. Dice with chance, because obviously we rely sometimes on divination, and we take our chances on making choices related to that. Recycle with recover, hello again. I absolutely love this deck. I feel that it is underrated, because at first look you may look at it and you may think, I have a lot of decks that look like that. I know that some have been comparing this to a over-glorified Lenormand. I tend to disagree, because the keywords are not the same. Some of them may be similar, but when you actually look at the cards and you work with this, it's a different kind of feel than working with the Lenormand deck. This is definitely a divination deck. This is definitely a deck that can actually be integrated into your tarot practice. It pairs up really well with other tarot decks that have this kind of art style. I'm thinking off the top of my head, it pairs really well with the Cosmic Cycles Tarot, for example. But it's absolutely beautiful, and yes, it's understated, because of course it's very simple. It's not crowded with symbol, but yet the messages really hit the right spot. We got butterfly with metamorphosis, we got a skull with endings, we got infinity with unlimited potential, lightning with disruption. I really honestly feel that this deck is underrated, because it looks very simple, but it's actually a really deep and interesting reader. And again, I feel that sometimes I am myself guilty of making judgment based on appearances, because that's what we're supposed to do. We don't always have the opportunity to check out the deck. When we buy it online, for example, we only see a couple of cards. Even when we go to a bookstore, sometimes they're just sealed. There's no deck, like a display copy for us to check out the cards. And so we have to rely on our first impressions, and sometimes our instinct, and sometimes those are actually wrong. So I feel that this deck is an absolute must in any collection, because as I said, it's very affordable. It is a mass market deck. It pairs up with a lot of tarot, and it's an absolute joy to use. And another deck that I really want to draw your attention to is the Inner Child Oracle by Amanda Lynn Aisling. This is another Hay House release. It's a 44 card deck. This is all about the inner child, and I have to say that the first time I presented this deck on my channel, I actually made a mistake, because I was saying that I wasn't entirely convinced about this deck being about inner child work, because to me, these are the backs, by the way, they're really gorgeous. So originally, by looking at the art style, I thought to myself, this is very similar and reminds me a lot of, for example, Danielle Noel's tarot, the Star Child and the Moon Child. If you know those decks, you'll understand what I mean. Those are indie decks, but Danielle Noel is also the creator of Work Your Light Oracle, which is actually a mass market deck. So if you know that deck, you will understand when I talk about cosmic vibes, because there's a lot of this kind of scenery in those decks. And I thought to myself, those, at least in my own practice, the way I conceive inner child work, I don't necessarily relate that to cosmic vibes, because cosmic vibes remind me a lot of the as above, for example, even in this card. And I need something more grounded, possibly more as a so below kind of decks. And so I wasn't entirely convinced that it was going to work. However, I actually started using it when we talk about, so with my members, my Starlight members, I do a lot of work on inner healing, for example, and I started using this deck in the last couple of weeks, and I really had to, change my mind about this deck. So the thing that actually made me change my mind is the association between the sentences at the bottom. So, for example, this one says, it is never truly the end. Beloved, in this, everything will be okay. This is something that relates so much, I would say 100%, with the way in which I actually do perform inner child wounds healing. And it's not the only card. I would say 99% of these cards are spot on, or at least they really resonate for me. I don't mean to say that every one of you that is doing inner child wounds healing will resonate with these cards, with these sentences, messages, but I do assure you that if originally your thoughts about this deck were to dismiss it or not, not buy it because you had the same impression out of the artwork portrayed in the cards, I can assure you that this does not have cosmic vibe or as above vibes. It is very, very useful for inner child wounds healing. And I have to say, I'm sorry to Amanda Lynn Aisling, the creator, for doubting her capabilities. And I wasn't really doubting her capabilities. I was just saying that to me, this gave different kind of vibes other than inner child healing. But this is indeed a fantastic instrument in your journey into healing. It is absolutely amazing. Sometimes I pair it up, and of course in this case I choose to pair it up with other similar decks that have the same kind of vibes, but most of the time I actually find that when you just pull one card by itself out of this deck, it works wonders. Let love guide you. Choose to see the good in the world today. Of course, it's a positive deck. Of course, it's one of those decks that would classify in my collection at least as a hug deck. But I do believe that it's underrated because perhaps there has been a bit of a misunderstanding when seeing this deck. And again, I refer back to the point that I was making earlier. We don't always have the possibility to check out the cards. Sometimes we look into TarotTube and we see if someone has made a walkthrough of this deck, and sometimes we can find it, sometimes we cannot. And so I feel that this is really underrated, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're doing this kind of work on your practices. If it's part of your approach to tarot, this is a very good instrument. And the next two decks, I'm actually going to show them to you together because they are in the same kind of theme. So one of them is a rather older kind of deck, and it's the Steampunk Tarot. There's a couple of Steampunk Tarots out there. This one in specific is by John and Caitlin Matthews. This one has been illustrated by Will Kingham. And then I wanted to show you how it pairs with Maxine Gatt's Zoologica, the Steampunk Oracle, which is a Blue Angel. Yes, it's a Blue Angel release. This deck has been released just recently in Australia, so I don't necessarily know whether it's already available in the rest of the world. Blue Angel is an Australian company, and you know, they actually make sure that we have access in Australia first to their publications other than the rest of the world, which is very nice because Rockpool is not doing the same. But it's a very, very beautiful deck, and I'm going to show you how it pairs with this one. This one instead is a Tattoo publication, and as I said, it's not a recent one. It's been out there for a while. I've had it in my collection for a while, but to be honest with you, it has been under the radar for me because I didn't feel the steampunk vibes. What happens is that this year I feel like there's so many new decks coming out that have this kind of theme. So for example, I know that there's a new steampunk tarot coming out, and it's I think it's the Art Nouveau Steampunk Tarot, and it might be by Los Carabel. I could be wrong, but in any case, it is you know, another steampunk theme deck. And so when I was looking at that tarot, and I thought to myself, hang on a second, I actually do have a steampunk tarot in my collection. I don't necessarily pay attention to it because I wasn't feeling the vibes. I went back to this deck, and oh my goodness. And I have to say, I don't really see it around, and I really believe that it's underrated. Now you have to understand that this deck is not for beginners, in the sense that, let me put it this way, as delicately as I can, this has a lot of renamings, and when it comes to the majors, but also when it comes to the minors, and that makes it so that you cannot necessarily pull it out and give a reading straight away, because you kind of need to go back to the book and understand why the cards have been renamed that way, what do they actually refer to the traditional RWS, and so that could be an additional step that you need to take in order to be able to use this deck. However, once you do that, I can assure you 100% that this deck is an absolute joy to use. Let me just show you. I'm not entirely happy with the way the packaging has been done, but I mean, it is one of those older decks that came this way. So let's first have a look at this deck. Let me just zoom back in so we can see properly. So this is not in order because I've been using it a fair bit. So we got the airships, as I was saying. So the stricken tower, obviously you will understand that it's a tower because it does have tower in the title anyway. But some other submersibles, for example, for the minors. Solarium, for example, in this case is referring back to the major, the sun. It is kind of easy to make the connection between Solarium and the sun. But in other cases, it's not that straightforward. The explorers are the lovers cards. Five of Angels, the Technomancer is obviously the Magician. Leviathans, we got Leviathans and airship and engines. So it is obviously, as I said before, you kind of need to work your way around this deck. You need to understand the renamings. Also the court cards have been renamed. We got the Captain of Leviathans, for example, Lady of Engines. But once you actually spend 5 minutes, because it doesn't take that much longer, to understand how the renaming has been applied to the cards, then I can assure you it's a fantastic experience to use this deck. I really love the artwork. It is indeed that steampunk kind of vibe. I have to say the cardstock is not my favorite. It's very papery, and it's one of those ones that it is indeed kind of, it feels like you can use it, but it makes you cautious. Let's put it this way, not to bend it too much because it can actually show some creases. I don't know necessarily if that is true. It's just a feeling that I have by the tactile feel of this deck. As I said, the steampunk theme is very clear here. So if you're not familiar with steampunk, it is a sci-fi genre, and it's based out of the assumption that the world or technology has never developed past the vapor engines kind of era. So you don't have electronics here, and it's kind of fantastic to see that, because of course you can feel the sci-fi vibes out of this deck, but at the same time it looks futuristic, and it's absolutely fantastic. And let me just say that I have recently acquired this deck, and I did a post on Instagram, and I got a lot of comments of people saying, what is this? Because no one has ever seen it before. And so I do understand that that might be related to the fact that it's not been really publicized, it's not been advertised. And as I said, Blue Angel is based in Australia, so it is possible that they made it available a couple of months ago in Australia, but it might not be available worldwide yet. It is coming, don't worry. And it might be picked up by other distributors like Llewellyn in the US, for example. I don't know. In any case, this deck is underrated because it's a round deck, and I feel that there is a lot of us, me included, that don't necessarily look keenly to round decks. It is difficult. Once you shuffle them, you have to find your best way to shuffle them. I think that overhand shuffling is the best way for me to shuffle this deck. And obviously when you over shuffle that way, well, overhand shuffle that way, sometimes you got the cards coming out upside down, which is not necessarily practical. However, once you get past that, and let me tell you, for this deck, I am absolutely okay with that. You look at the images and it's an absolute, really wonderful deck. I mean, look at this. These are all animals, if you can believe it, but with a steampunk kind of vibes to them. So it's almost as if these were mechanical animals. And I really love what's been done in this deck. Look at this. This is a meerkat with a steampunk, the typical Victorian steampunk kind of a hat. Is it a stove hat? I think it's called stove top hat or something like that. Sorry, I don't necessarily know the name. So you got a mechanical butterfly, and you got a mechanical longhorn beetle, and a tree frog, and a wombat. I mean, look how cute this wombat is. Let me tell you, if you're not familiar with wombats, they're Australian animals. They're absolutely adorable. They're just a ball of fur, a very solid one, because they're not lightweight. And they're really, really lovely. And I just, whenever you go to a conservation park, for example, in Australia, Sydney has got a few of those around. And we do go there sometimes, because being European, for me, looking at Australian animals is always a source of wonder, because you always look at them and you go, how is that even possible? And we do have a recurring bet, and it's a joke between my husband and I, that platypuses actually don't exist. And I can assure you, I've actually seen platypuses in the wild, and they are real. It's just that they look so improbable that you really feel like it's a conspiracy theory, like someone has actually made them up. And wombats are absolutely adorable. And so we got bats here, you know, housefly. I mean, look at that. Even something as probably underrated as the housefly, it looks absolutely gorgeous and fantastic in this deck. Or, you know, a squid, or the house wren, or the dragonfly. And look at this bilby. That's another Australian animal. Let me tell you, these are actually, I don't know the classification correctly, but I know that they are rare. To sight a bilby is actually a blessing. You don't see them around as you would see, for example, kangaroos or koalas in the wild. Even koalas are getting less and less sightings. So bilby, you consider yourself lucky when you see one. Armadillos and cicadas, and you know, you got a seahorse, which is absolutely lovely. And sorry, I'm showing you all the cards, which is not something that I do, but it's just, this deck is so unbelievable. Look at the boxfish. I mean, come on. This deck is so unbelievably nice. A spider, let's just move on to the spider, because thinking that they might actually produce a mechanical spider, that is tough, a nightmare for me. But anyway, so the hermit crab, for example. So the hermit crab, and the shell of the hermit crab is a trumpet. How cool is that? I really, really love it. And this is the axolotl. So the axolotl is a fantastic creature of the abyss, and it's absolutely amazing. you know, a tortoise. There you go. I wanted to find the koala and I finally find it. How cute is this koala? I mean, with the hat, with the clock, and you know, and it's absolutely wonderful. I think that they've done a really fantastic job with this deck, and I'm really happy to show it to you. This is a pufferfish, absolutely wonderful. So let me just show you these two together, because that's the reason why I have actually decided to show them together. And let's zoom out a little bit. And so you just, I don't have enough room, so I'm just gonna do it this way with 1 and 1 card. Sorry, this is the second time that I got the cyborg, which is actually the devil card with the pufferfish, and I think that it's, I don't know, it's crazy because we got the pufferfish with the spikes and we got the cyborg with the spikes as well, so it's really fantastic. By the way, I've got my cat. I don't know if you can hear him. I don't know. I think he's fine. I think he's just kind of bored with hearing mommy talking. So if you can hear him meowing in the background, I apologize for that. I will try and edit the sound out. I absolutely love my cats. Look at this. I mean, the 2 of submersibles with the Nautilus. I mean, the Nautilus, if you don't know, it was the name of the submersible in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues on the Sea or something like that. So isn't it absolutely amazing to pair these two together? I assure you it's fantastic. And yes, I know that many of you will point out that the Oracle deck doesn't have keywords, but I can tell you the book is actually really cool. So let's see, for example, in this case, we got the horseshoe crab, and it's number 38. So let's go to number 38 so I can actually read quickly out of it. So the probability engine, it was a surprise even to you that the copper-based elements of your design would respond to the tides and the moon. As their fullness approaches, the engine gently hums to life. It is fitting that ultimately such a machine should be a product of luck. The resourceful wrangling together of substitutes like a pumice stone core and a saw-toothed rudder created something beyond the sum of the parts. It was not luck, but trial and curiosity that I unlocked what it could do. And now, as the peak moment approaches, you enter your goal. Irrelevant data is cut free and likelihood filters through the heart of the machine. The 8 legs adjust and your course is set. It would be easy to miss the magic at work because there is no guaranteed outcome. However, you have discovered that success often comes down to an incremental increase in probability. I absolutely love this description because, first of all, you know, it's like a conversation. It's someone telling you something, which is not common to all of the Oracle decks. There's additional, of course, in this case, but I'm not gonna read all of it. Just for you to know, at the end of the description, there is, if you just want to read about the divination meaning, you can, and it's the one that it's actually in cursive. So fate is on your side, give it a boost by adjusting your approach and broadening your prospects, etc. And I really love actually reading the description in the book about these cards because on the one hand, this deck is really cute, and on the other hand, this book is really interesting. And pairing it up with the Steampunk Tarot, I think it's the right way to go. So these two decks are absolutely underrated, and they are mass market, they are very affordable. If you live in Australia, the Steampunk Tarot, I got it out of Amazon for 18 Australian dollars, which is really nothing. And this one is a little bit more, but I'm sorry, I don't remember how much I paid for it. But in any case, I'm sure that they are absolutely affordable. And there's another deck that I wanted to show you, so let's see. Okay, so I need to show you 2 versions of this deck because it's an absolute joy. And unfortunately though, for now at least, this deck has only been published in 2 languages, in Italian and in French. I got the 2 versions because the Italian version is actually really large. It's a very large deck. The French version is actually more approachable, easier for me to shuffle because I do have injuries in my fingers. So let me just show you both. So this one is, okay, the name of it is Lo Scrigno degli Oracoli, which means the oracle's chest, and it's actually composed out of 3 different oracles. It's a huge deck when you put them all 3 together. And the Italian version comes with a actually really good book. So let me just show you quickly, because this is really interesting. This is the book. And it does have a lot of description. It's also proposing a couple of spreads that you can use. For each and every card, there's a lot of as I said, a lot of description. You also have an upright and reversed interpretation of the cards. And this is the Italian deck, and as I explained, this one is not very manageable for me. If I can show you, it's actually, well, it's more or less the height of the length of my hand, and this makes it a bit hard for me to shuffle. So it's composed out of 3 decks, as I was mentioning. I think I actually shuffled them all together. And one of them is based exclusively on cats, which, you know, I just said that I love my cats and I just really stick to my guns. I absolutely love decks based on cats as well. Another one is based on witches, and another one of these 3 is actually based on Roman gods and goddesses. Now this deck, let me just show you, because it's actually much easier to show you the French version because it's not as big. So the French version actually comes with the cards here. Let me show you. So it comes with these cards, which basically are reflecting the guidebook like we've seen it in the Italian one, because they also come with spreads. And I guess the amount of information is kind of similar. You don't lose much. Both of these decks are available on Amazon. Obviously, this is available on Amazon Italy. But if you're in Australia, for example, you can. It's also available from Amazon UK, if I'm not wrong, and this is unfortunately only available on Amazon France. But they are available. They are not indie decks. They are mass market decks. So let me just show you the cards. These are absolutely gorgeous. I really love everything about them. The you know, the art style is very simple, a very linear kind of artwork, but it works really well. They have, these are the Roman, I think I didn't shuffle this one. So let me just jump ahead to the Witcher. So this is the Witches. As I said, there's 3 decks. So this one was the Roman gods and goddesses. This is the Witches deck. And look at the color palette. Isn't it absolutely fantastic in this deck? I really love it. I have to say, there is, ironically, I feel that there is more vibrancy in the French edition rather than the Italian edition. I don't know whether that's because it's a slightly different cardstock. This feels smoother than this one. But I like both versions, so the only reason why I actually reached out for the French one is just that it's easier for me to handle. And then, as I was saying, there is the cat-based deck, and it's just really lovely. And this one actually depicts cats as being cats. So there are a lot of decks out there, even tarot decks, that depict cats as being human. So there is a word for that. It's very difficult for me to pronounce it. I think it's anthropomorphized. I do prefer when cats are shown as doing their cat thing. I mean, look at this, it's absolutely gorgeous. And this is actually lead is the help. Oh, look at that, the nourishing. Oh. So I really love these decks. They're just absolutely gorgeous to work with. Off the top of my head, they really pair well with Honasa House decks, Honasa's tarot decks, because they kind of share a similar kind of a vibe and a color palette. And also, I don't have it, but I know that there is a deck which is called the Universal Folk Tarot. I think it's already available in the US, which is from the same author as the Universal Folk Oracle deck, published by US Games. And I can't wait to get my hands on that deck, because I think it will pair up really well with these decks. So these are underrated. I think they're under the radar because, first of all, they have not been published in English. Although I have to say that the keywords are very understandable. The guidebook for the Italian edition is just easy when you use your Google Translate lens, for example. It's something that can be easily done. And I think that they pair well with a number of decks. And I just absolutely wanted to bring your attention to these two because I think that the creators have done an absolutely fantastic job with these decks. And I am so sorry that they have not been receiving the love that they actually deserve. Now, this was it for today. These are my top 10 underrated mass market decks, and I'll be very curious to know if you think that there's other underrated mass market decks out there. Please let me know in the comments below because I always love to check out other decks. But so far, thanks so much for being with me till the end of this video. Have a great day.